And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, bringing you your Alaska marine weather coming up here for the next couple of days through the midweek, Wednesday and Thursday. A quick check of the sea ice. Little ice has formed along the Russian Arctic coast on the west side of the Chukchi Sea, and also a few little pockets here along the Beaufort Sea coastline between Utqiagvik and Kaktovik, but otherwise not too much in the way of ice. We pretty much just reached the minimum ice extent we would expect now going into early October. And with the colder air that's beginning to show up statewide now, ice development is more likely here in the coming days and certainly weeks. Looking at the weather map come late tonight, early on Wednesday morning, a low will be lifting out of the North Pacific with a warm front pushing up into the Gulf. We have high pressure centered over the east central interior. This will allow for some colder temperatures. Would not be surprised to see some lows in the single digits here where there has been some fresh light snow cover. And there's another low out here in the western Bering that will have a tendency to occlude and weaken. Here comes the next low. This one on Wednesday afternoon will be south here of the tip of the Alaska Peninsula, down around 987 millibars. Strong winds, though, along this frontal system. We expect gale force winds with some areas, even small areas of storm force winds for a time later Wednesday and a Wednesday night. And then the low sits here out over the lower Alaska Peninsula, just above 980 millibars, with the frontal system draped along the Gulf Coast. And there'll be areas of moderate to heavy rain, especially northeastern Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. As moisture spreads inland to the interior, we expect some more snow to break out, accumulating snows here in areas of the interior, encountering the colder air, and also strong northeast-east flow, say out of Norton Sound and the southwest coast. We'll see gale force winds there as well on the backside of the low. And looking at areas of the southeast, the Panhandle winds southeast at 10 knots across the inner channels, 2-foot waves. Outer coast, look for southeast winds 10 to 15 knots, becoming easterly 15 to 20 knots toward Cape Suckling, and we expect waves 6-7 feet. On Thursday, winds will be out of the southeast to south, 15 to 20 knots in through the inner channels, waves 3 to as high as 4 feet here in Dixon Entrance. For the outer coast, southeast to east winds 25 to 30 knots and waves generally 10 to 13 feet, but could be as high as 18 feet off of Cape Suckling, where winds will be easterly at 35 knots. Along the northwestern Gulf Coast, winds will be northeasterly. Strongest winds lower Cook Inlet and just northeast of Kodiak Island, 30 to 35 knot northeasterly winds, waves 7-8 feet there. Look for northeast winds within Prince William Sound, generally still only around 10, maybe 15 knots, waves a couple of feet. But come Thursday, we have much stronger winds, gale force winds of southeast 40-45 knots outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance. And then as we go down here along lower Cook Inlet and just northeast of Kodiak Island, we're expecting winds 40-45 knot gales, even 50 knot easterly winds there just northeast of Kodiak City. Waves 13 to 17 feet in that region there in the entrance of Cook Inlet. Waves 4 feet Prince William Sound, 6-7 feet upper Cook Inlet. Along the Alaska Peninsula Wednesday, winds are going to increase to gale force 35 to 45 knots, strongest there just to the east-southeast of Sand Point. Waves in some areas building in excess of 10 to 15 feet quite easily. 40-knot winds surrounding Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait and offshore, waves 10-11 feet either side. And then along the Bering side of the Alaska Peninsula, northeast winds 30 knots out of Bristol Bay to north of Cold Bay with waves 7 to 9 feet. The low center on Thursday will be parked here right up over Cold Bay, Sand Point. And with the circulation, south winds at least on the east side of Kodiak Island to 25 knots, 14-foot waves, 35-knot gales there within Shelikof Strait, 10-foot waves. And then for the lower areas of the Bering there along Bristol Bay down to Cold Bay, waves 6 to 9 feet. The Aleutians on Wednesday, winds will be out of the east-northeast, at least eastern Aleutians, 20-25 knots, turning southeasterly 25 to 30 knots before more southerly, and then southwesterly there once you get around and west of Kiska. For Thursday, winds will be westerly, northwesterly, 20 to 25 knots over the eastern Aleutians, variable 10 knots, central Aleutians turning back toward the west, west of Adak and west-southwest there of Kiska at 15 to 20 knots. Along the coast, the southwest coast, we do see that we have winds that are offshore on Wednesday, 15 to 20 knots, as high as 30 knots out of Bristol Bay with waves 5-6 feet there. 25-knot winds the Pribilof Islands with 8-foot waves, 12-foot waves there out there toward St. Matthew. And then by Thursday, the pressure gradient across this region tightens up. We have 35-knot northeasterly gale force winds all the way from out of Norton Sound down along the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim deltas out of Bristol Bay. Waves generally 5 to 7 feet here along the nearshore waters of the coastline. Strong upwelling as the result of the strong northeast offshore flow. And north winds as high as 35 knots there at St. Matthew with waves of 15 feet. For the Bering Strait south of there, east winds 15 to 20 knots north of St. Lawrence Island, waves 3 to 4 feet. Winds turn back to the west from around Kivalina Point Hope on toward Wainwright at 15 knots with waves 3 to 5 feet. And then southwest winds 20 to 25 knots along the Beaufort Sea coastline, 4 to 5 foot waves. For Thursday, the Arctic coast, Beaufort Sea there, we're looking for southwest to west winds 20 knots, turning more northerly through the Chukchi Sea at 15 knots, and then northeasterly 25 to 30 knots through the Bering Strait with waves of 5 to 6 feet, though as high as 8 to 9 feet there in the vicinity on the north side of St. Lawrence at Gamble.